Would you believe it's 15 years this week since Chelsea won their first Premier League title, and boy, did they do it in some style. Let me just throw some stats at you. This is the most points in a season, 95, which was only broken a couple of seasons ago by that Pep Guardiola side. Won 29 games in that campaign, 25 clean sheets. They can see the fewest Premier League goals, just 15 in the season. They weren't defeated at all at home. They just lost one match all campaign, and they finished 12 points ahead of Arsenal. And what we've got to remember as we welcome in Gav and Don to the show, this was an Arsenal side that were invincible, of course, going into the start of this season. Chelsea came in, and sometimes, Gav, do we forget how good this team actually was?
Yeah, I mean, I don't forget it because that's a team I cover closely, as well as the year before. I mean, the entire Abramovich era. But obviously, Abramovich had come in all guns blazing the previous summer. They finished second the year before under Claudio Ranieri. And had they not lost their head-to-head against Arsenal, had they won that, they might have actually won it that season. Had they not thrown away the semi-final against Monaco the year before, they might have even won the Champions League, and we'd have a different history now. But I mean, that was the base on which Mourinho built, and Mourinho just took it to another level. Tremendous signings. Cech and Robben had been signed the year before, but of course arrived that summer. Carvalho at the back, and of course Didier Drogba up front, really making all the difference that season.
Don, why do we overlook them? We talk about the Manchester City team that broke the 100 points, obviously, Manchester United, 1999, the Invincibles of Arsenal. This team were up there, though, weren't they?
Oh, they certainly were. I was at West Ham at the time, and it was a difficult one because you never quite were sure if the juggernaut of Abramovich and Jose and Chelsea were going to go and kick on and be as good as what they were, because we were sort of looking at the likes of Man United being strong for many a year, Arsenal being strong, Liverpool having the history, and you always felt as though as a player they would come back one day. But the Chelsea side, my recollection, were just big, strong men. I mean, terrific footballers. I mean, they could mix it. Whether you look back at the Invincibles of Arsenal a year before, and I've done it earlier. I was looking at the two sides, and they're very similar. If you're a Thierry Henry fan, you can argue a case of Didier Drogba. If you're a Vieira fan, you can argue the case of Makelele. If you like Sol Campbell, you can argue John Terry, and the list goes on, by the way. But I think maybe the Invincibles were a little bit more stylish. I think in their system, 4-4-2 with Lundberg and Perez had a little bit easier on the eye with Bergkamp. I think with Chelsea, they were in a 4-3-3 at the time, and they were just dismantling sides for fun, but all breaking all the records that you said, Dan, of keeping clean sheets, fewest goals conceded. They were incredibly tough to beat. But my recollection, standing in the tunnel next to these guys, the majority of them were huge, and they were, on their day, as the record suggests, nearly unplayable, all but that one game.
Gab, you made a good point in that you brought up all of the players that came in during the summer, all of them pretty much new to the Premier League. This somewhat tore up that myth, didn't it? Oh, it takes time to adapt to English football. It's a very different style. This team came in, hit the ground running, and destroyed the defending champions who were invincible the season before.
Yeah, I mean, look, this whole thing about adapting and style, you know, those differences, which were very stark in the past, I think, are diminishing year on year. I think the fact that Mourinho was new, and look, Mourinho has his critics these days, and I'm certainly among them when I think he screws things up. But people forget just the impact that he had in that first season. You know, that Chelsea side, yes, they hardly conceded anything, but they wore you down, and they played some really modern attacking football at times. You know, the way Damien Duff and Arjen Robben out wide, the way those two guys combined, the way the fullbacks also helped, the runs from midfield of Frank Lampard. It was so much quality in that time, and there's such attention to detail as well. You know, what people often forget about the Invincibles is that was an outstanding team, but you know, that was also a team that drew I want to say, I think 12 games that season. You know, this Chelsea team went and they went there. They went for the jugular, and most of the time they beat you. They went the whole season, they only lost that one game.
Don, what was it like? You mentioned before, just give us a little more detail going up against this sort of team.
Yeah, it was. I'll take you back to the year before in the Invincibles, and going back even 1 or 2 years before that. When you played against the very best Arsenal sides, you stood in a tunnel, and I used to stand next to probably Patrick Vieira when I was playing against him. And you think, right, how can I try and get the best out of my opponent today? Can I try and run him into the channels where he doesn't want to be? Well, no, he could do that. What's he going to do to me? Well, he can outrun me. He's probably physically stronger than me. He's probably better on the ball. So you try and have to come up with things. And you look along the line of that great Arsenal side, and there's 11 of them. Now you fast forward a year, and it's almost like my recollection of that season or that period was Arsene Wenger had the formula to be and to take Arsenal to one of the best Premier League sides of all time. And almost within 18 months, he sort of threw that formula in the bin, and he went for the more diminutive players, and he tried to make them sort of Barcelona-esque. And Jose came along, and one man that we must give a quick mention to, I think, is Claudio Ranieri, because he was building this Chelsea side just before Jose come in. And then Jose went in that bin, and he took Arsenal's formula. He brought in the big players. Lampard was already there, and the likes of Terry, but he had Drogba and he had Makelele. And all of a sudden, he just went and got that formula of Arsenal's, stole it, replicated that over a short period of time, and took this Chelsea side, to greatness. It's bizarre, really, how we don't give this Chelsea side that won the title in 04-05 a lot more love, really.
And let's not forget as well, Gab, pretty much the decade leading up to this season, it was a coin flip as who was going to win it, United or Arsenal. Those two had been so dominant.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, look, until that point, only 3 teams had won the Premier League in the previous 13 years. You had that one crazy season of Blackburn winning, and obviously they were very well bankrolled with Sutton and Shearer and whatnot. And otherwise, it was basically a monologue from Manchester United, and then those 2 tremendous Arsenal double winning sides. And so, the fact that Chelsea could come in and shake it up. I mean, younger viewers will remember, obviously, the impact Manchester City had when they came in and threw enormous amounts of money and quickly sort of hit the ground running and assembled a team. I'd almost argue Chelsea did that quicker than City. Different circumstances, of course. But, from Ranieri's first season, where he'd been there before, but, all of a sudden the team were hugely competitive, to obviously Mourinho's first season, where he just went and he built them and he took them to another level. And really, I don't like it when people bring up sort of, they talk about winning mentality and metaphysical stuff. I like stuff that I can see and measure. But there is no question that there was an intimidation factor to that Chelsea team, and really a winning mentality and attention to detail that really made all the difference. That once they got rolling, the momentum they built, really, really hard to stop. And let's not forget, they also reached the Champions League semi-final, where they eventually they lost to Liverpool 1-0 in aggregate, with that goal, the so-called ghost goal, that Jose Mourinho is still complaining about today. Or sorry, maybe it was 1-1.
Oh, he's forgotten about it, Gav.
I think it's right. It was. Yeah, I know, whatever. But the Luis Garcia goal that ultimately knocked them out, the ghost goal that they're still upset about today.
Thanks so much for watching ESPN on YouTube. And for more sports highlights and analysis, be sure to download the ESPN app. And for premium content and live streaming, subscribe to ESPN Plus.